one of the quotes that I got from a person I follow called Ryan Dees, he's an investor, is that you want to start, you want to become the architect of what you're doing or the architect of your team. And you don't necessarily want to be the hero, the person who just fixes one small thing, another small thing, another small thing. But you want to elevate yourself to the point whereby you are in charge, you're creating a system, and that system gets to work. You do the hard work up front to get the system working, and then your team can continue. That can continue working without having your day-to-day involvement. Thank you for joining on this particular webinar. And we're going to be discussing this topic basically that is around how to approach building a team that gets better every single week. And one of the things that I just want to start by having you who's joined asking yourself is in your current position or in your current state as a team lead, as a manager, or someone who essentially works with different teams, you ask yourself, is your team getting better every week with intention? Or is it simply a case of you basically just showing up and just hoping for the best? And also, you need to ask yourself this particular question, do you have the right kind of systems set up to ensure that your team continues and continues to grow? In that, it's every single time, or rather every single week after going through specific iterations of your processes, your team is actually able to ingest the new learnings that they get from interacting with various clients, various challenges, and they're able to make them become a lot better. And in this way, it's the way we're going to address this is I'm going to just ask you, do you have the right loops or rather virtuous cycles that feed into your team and empower them to actually just deliver compounding returns in the long term? And the idea is that by going through these particular loops, the understanding is when you picture a loop, it's where every previous action feeds into the next. And the understanding is that you become a different, after when you start at the top and you arrive at the beginning of the loop, you're a different person and you've essentially evolved into a different version of yourself. And that's what we want to look at today. How does your team become a different version of itself each and every week with the right loops in place? Because the idea is that if your team isn't becoming a different version of themselves every week, then improvement is probably not happening. And you're just simply maintaining a status quo, which is not what we want for our particular businesses and also for productivity. So one thing I'll just ask you to journey on me with is this concept called a flywheel effect. And what this is, it's something that an author called James Clear introduced me to. And what I want you to understand is this is the whole concept of a flywheel is this is coming from engineering. It's this energy efficient wheel that that is incredibly that is great at energy management. And the amount of energy it stores basically depends on how fast it spins and the amount of friction it encounters and also its size. And it works basically on this concept of momentum. So essentially, when you do the first push, basically, like this is really hard to do. The first jolt of energy is very difficult to get the wheel turning. And the understanding is that once that particular push has been done, once that particular energy has been dissipated into the wheel, you now have this wheel spinning faster and faster and faster, and you don't need to necessarily give it another jolt of energy. Its own momentum will keep spinning. So the idea is that you want to get the place where you have essentially just pushed once, and you generate enough uh, momentum to basically keep your team propelled towards the right direction. And what the flywheel effect basically gives us, or rather what it allows us to understand is, and this was made popular by an author called Jim Collins in the book Good to Great, and it basically shows us that when you have, the idea is that you want consistent, small wins, and they basically just get to compound over time. So the idea is you want consistency, you want small wins which happen consistently, and these compound over time to basically give you this loop effect here, and you can be able to gain unstoppable momentum with regards to the processes that you have, and also with regards to the productivity that you desire to achieve. And what we're going to check out is the three kinds of flywheels, which will basically just cause, or rather, three areas in which you need to consider having the right kind of loops or flywheels, if you want to use that particular term, which are basically going to have your team producing more, delivering more quality, and learning from each mistake that it produces, and work together more intentionally. So the understanding here is that these particular systems are going to allow your teams to produce more, make less mistakes, and work together more intentionally. And in case you have anything you want to share, feel free to use the chat and comment. That's open to you. So in getting to the first one that I'd like us to explore. So the first type of flywheel that a team and your team needs to have is what I'd call your knowledge or learning. Yes, your learning loop. Sorry for that. Your knowledge or learning loop. Yes, loop. And the understanding here is to ask yourself, how does your team learn? How does it absorb knowledge? And how does it improve on a day-to-day basis, right? So, and even better than that is to ask yourself, okay, do I have a way in which my team iteratively learns better and absorbs knowledge? And even better than that, how do they work what they have learned back into your processes and their work? Because it's one thing for your team to essentially have these insights or even get feedback, but you end up having a case whereby this feedback is not necessarily providing any value to anyone. So the key thing here that we're after is we want on this particular topic, your loop, basically this particular one, the knowledge and learning loop, is after discovering new ways to do things, right? So you want to figure out new ways in which you can Are you there? Yeah, new ways to basically do things. That's what you want to discover. And in order basically to be able to do this, the 4 steps that recommended you take is the first thing is that you will execute, meaning you will, or rather you will do some work, you will do work, and after you execute, you will essentially get feedback. Sorry for that. Yeah. So you'll essentially get some feedback. Now, the understanding here is that if you wanna check out how to execute better, you can check out the past webinar that we did around the Kai framework. That basically goes into more detail around how to execute well as a team. So once you execute, you essentially get feedback. The understanding here is that in your loop, you're supposed to have a way to actually track the feedback and collect this particular feedback and have a place where you have documented, centralized. It's probably you have an automated way of doing this. You can also just keep track of it in an ad hoc way, like you sell things, customers give you feedback on WhatsApp. Find a way to basically take that and track that somewhere that your team can see, because maybe it's in a one-on-one conversation. And once you essentially have feedback, the next step here in this particular loop is to ideally reflect. And in reflection, this is where you start now to go deeper into it. Have meetings whereby you're able to interrogate the feedback that you got, right? Have retrospective meetings, have review meetings, have meetings dedicated specifically to understanding, one, what went wrong, why did we do what we do, or rather even understanding why are things going well, and how can we what is working, and how can we do more of that which is working. And after this, and this is even where most of the let me just fix that arrow. Yeah, most of where the magic actually happens is the next thing is you've gotten the feedback, you've reflected, you have thought of what can work, what does not work, and you now come here and you digest the insights. Now, in digesting the insights, the idea is now you take the action items from the reflection and actually make them practical, right? Update your process. Have an all hands meeting where you announce that, hey, we are going to be doing things differently as a result of X. And this type of system will essentially now feed back into, as you can see, how you now do your work. And as you keep doing this, you will notice that your team is actually absorbed, that learning is actually getting absorbed. And you have clear points of, okay, so we always talk about people need training, people need training, people need training. But the thing we need to ask ourselves is, okay, where exactly do they need training, right? Where is the knowledge gap? And this particular loop can show you where to get these particular knowledge gaps, where to, which particular sports your people need more capacitation in, and how to continually increase your throughput. And one of the things that you will understand is, as you do this, remember the first thing that we are looking at is we want consistent small wins that compound over time. That's the whole idea behind basically doing this particular thinking in terms of a flywheel and seeing your system from the perspective of a loop, that your team gets better and becomes a better version of itself. So I'll go to the next version of this, or rather the next loop that we're going to be looking at. And this is a very interesting one. So I call it, or rather I found it's called the consistency slash quality loop, right? Yeah, consistency slash quality loop. And in this particular flywheel, what are we looking at? We are looking at standards. Standards enforcement. That's what we're aiming for. The idea behind a quality loop basically is to, one, you want to ensure that when you come up with an SOP, and this is what you got in the first place when you went through as you're going through your knowledge and learning loop. In this particular cycle, in this particular loop, you want to enforce those standards. You develop standards. Now you want to have a way to consistently enforce these. And in this particular one, as the other one as well, you essentially do work, or you have an incident in some cases, and after this happens, what comes next? You, after doing the work, you check the result. So what you do, you check the result. So this is, after doing what you're doing, you have to ask yourself, do you have a place whereby you can measure what you do, right? Do you have a dashboard? Do you have metrics? Do you have a board that you look at? If it's sales that you want to, you basically want to ensure that we are selling to the right kind of people, we are getting enough volume, or rather, are we approaching our sales in the right way? Is there a way that you can basically, after work has been done, you can you can check the result of that work against, after it's inputted? Is it put in a place whereby there's some sort of metric system and there's a goal that it's actually being weighted against? That's one thing to ask yourself. Now, once you have this result and it's against your standard that you set, courtesy of going through the first loop, you then commit to an adjustment, right? You adjust. Essentially, this might look like you fix the issue, you have a meeting, or maybe you even introduce a different loop, right? You go within the learning loop, and basically this becomes maybe a feedback issue, a reflection with some insights. You do some adjustments. We've done something, we have a standard, and since we're enforcing this standard, we will now have seen that, okay, this falls short. We now want to adjust and particularly fix the issue. And after you perform your adjustment, again, meaning you have become, okay, you have reacted to what happened, you have made the adjustment. The other thing to make this now more permanent is, again, you basically, oh, sorry about that. Okay. Yes. In order to basically just make this adjustment is you digest. You have to find a way to digest your insights. And after digesting these insights, again, create your action items, update your SOPs now that you have more information, and then do the work with these insights in mind. This is the way basically that you will essentially continue to iterate, and your team, the more it does this, the better it gets over time. The easier it becomes for your improvements to be tracked. These are very, very small things and they do look obvious. But if you really, really think about it, you can actually ask yourself, okay, if this, the easiest things to ignore are the ones which look obvious. And the obviousness of this is why so many teams basically ignore the basics and end up in this situation where, oh, we will improve when we improve, or we will get better when you get better, as opposed to having these intentionally set up. And the last one that we're basically just going to be looking at is called my favorite one, is a connection slash collaboration. Collaboration loop. That's what we are going to be looking at. And the understanding is, one, how does your team connect with each other? Meaning, how do they engage? And also, how do they view their teammates' roles in relation to themselves, right? So, do they understand where certain handoffs happen? Do they understand where where responsibility ends and another person's begins, or are your roles kind of intermingled and there's a little to no accountability? The key thing here that we want is to build ownership. Okay, want to build ownership at this particular point. So building ownership is what we are after in this particular loop, and this starts with a very different, or rather starts at a very different point. The first thing this starts at is you need to start from a point of shared context. And this is, so you have your shared context, right? This is, you need to have a central place at least where, one, do you have a documentation that has all your roles? Do you have places, Daisy, right? Your driver, approver, consulted, informed, a document that shows, that clearly outlines who is supposed to be consulted for what. Do you have clear communication channels where you know that, okay, if we want, if it's a WhatsApp channel or you use Slack or whatever that is, you have these places where you know that this is a central place at which knowledge is shared at. So once you have that, the next, what that feeds now into is alignment. Or this align step. And this is from a place of shared context. You can now be able to align on things. And this is, you have systems that, one, do you have meetings that are specifically, purposefully set up to drive decision making? So you share the context, you know, the what of the process. Now you're trying to understand how do we, or rather in the alignment stage, you have meetings which are purposefully geared towards driving decision making. This is your stand-ups, your all hands, your retros. And after those meetings are done, essentially the next thing is to act on what was shared. So from people understanding, having a shared context, they are now able to, that feeds into the alignment, which now feeds into the ability to act or develop a sense of ownership over what they have. And after that, I'm sure you particularly know, you then come in and you digest those insights. So you have a way of making them as practical as possible. This is update your documentation. Feed them back into, this feeds back into the shared context. And if you keep doing this over time, you will notice that your team automatically, you're covering your bases on your knowledge, how you're learning. Your consistency is on point. You are constantly enforcing the standards and even developing new ones. And also, you are constantly improving the sense of ownership that you have. Then your team is essentially going to grow, and your team is going to continue to deliver great results over time. And once the momentum just builds, as in essentially you have started an engine of self-improvement that, it's hard to start, but it's also gets hard to stop because it becomes the default culture. So as we basically just head into the Q&A session, if you're to look at all this from a 10,000 foot view, you essentially have this area of work, your knowledge loop, your consistency, and your collaboration. These all essentially just feed into each other, as in it's an interdependent it's an interdependent process where all these constantly feed into each other with their own microcycles inside. And I will head over to the Q&A section, and also just leave you with one remark as we head into that the key purpose of this particular trainings that Tizisha does is we basically exist to empower teams to take a better sense of ownership, to scale their operational success by giving them systems that allow them to scale practices that work in their team. And one of the quotes that I got from a person I follow called Ryan Dees, he's an investor, is that you want to start, you want to become the architect of what you're doing or the architect of your team. And you don't necessarily want to be the hero, the person who just fixes one small thing, another small thing, another small thing. But you want to elevate yourself to the point whereby you are in charge, you're creating a system, and that system gets to work. You do the hard work up front to get the system working, and then your team can continue working without having your day-to-day involvement. Because when individual success, or rather individual habits that work well for an individual can scale to the whole team, then profitable will just be an inevitable outcome. So yeah, that's it for today. If you have any questions, you can take those in the chat. If we don't have any, then we can wrap up the session and you can have the rest of your day. So thank you for showing up, and I'm glad that I hope this was beneficial. So yeah, go ahead and improve your team with this. Yeah.